All right, well, here we are, circling onto another Mental Health Monday during COVID-19.
Like Groundhog Day.
It is. Oh my gosh, that's the strangest part about time. And I'm here with my friend Joe Rainey. We have been facilitating these since the very beginning of COVID, and we're so happy today to have with us our friend Kelli Skoog, who lives in Minneapolis. And so that's a fun part about technology, is that we can gather even though we don't live in the same place. Joe and I are in Colorado. She's there in Minnesota today. And the purpose of this experiment and this initiative is really just to provide a place to get a little extra love and encouragement and tools and strengthening to navigate as healthy as we can the realities of COVID-19 and the strain and the stress and the disintegration and all the things that it's causing for us in so many ways. So we're glad to be here and glad that you can be with us, Kelli.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
looking forward to it. Any friend of Phyllis is a friend of mine. So just a reminder, we have the discussion questions in the description box under the YouTube link, or also in the show notes on any of the podcast apps that you might be using. So I would really encourage you to take some time to process and with someone else if possible, and just ingest it, digest it, rather than just letting content come at you. So looking forward to what you have to share today, Kelli.
Oh, I forgot something important. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. But Kelli is a therapist in Minneapolis.
Oh yeah.
And so in a practice there called Down to Earth Therapy. And so it's really important to know that in these segments that our friends who are therapists, spiritual directors, coaches, mental health sustainers, that they're just offering, this isn't therapy, it's tools to help us. And so we're really grateful for your wisdom and your perspective. You're going through it too. And that's been a huge thing for everybody. Like, everyone's in this together, and this isn't like you coming from on high telling people who are experiencing this what to do. It's actually like, this is what we're all doing together, and this is what could be healthy. So sorry about that.
Yeah, no, that's good. We're down to earth at the refuge, so it works that you work for Down to Earth Therapy. So take it away, Kelli.
Okay, well, thanks. So I thought I would do like two different tracks, and I have my notes here, so I'll be referring to those. But so I want to spend most of the time on kind of surviving this pandemic, but I also want to just say a little piece about the social unrest and social justice piece towards the end. So I first want to say that, this is uncharted territory, and I'm sure that all your speakers have been saying that, but there is no playbook for this. We don't know how to do this, so we're just doing the best that we can. And I love Maya Angelou's quote that you do the best you can until you know better, and then when you know better, do better. And that's not, I think that could also come across as a shaming kind of a thing too, that, oh, well, I do know better, but I'm not doing better. So I don't mean it that way at all. What I mean is that we need to take this slowly, and this is a day-by-day thing that we are living through, and we're all living through it. And there's some people suffering more than other people, financially, emotionally, just socioeconomically, all different kinds of ways. So I want to be mindful of that. And so I just was thinking of some strategies that I know that me and my friends have talked about, me and co-workers, co-therapists, things that we talk about with clients, things that I've been personally trying to do to kind of manage this time. And one of the things that I've really noticed is that and I'm going to say we a lot because I'm going to include myself in a lot of this, is that we tend to be really hard on ourselves. We can be our own worst critic. And so I know that when the pandemic first started, people were like, oh, this is my chance to diet. This is my chance to get in shape. This is my chance to, and then we just didn't realize how much energy it was going to take just to be in this weird new world. And so all of a sudden we're like, I just don't have the energy to run the marathon. I just don't have, all these big goals, and that is okay. And I really think that sometimes we set ourselves up for higher expectations when something kind of new like this comes around. And so part of that is just recognizing our own self-talk. I'm a huge Brene Brown fan, and I follow her on Facebook and on Instagram, and I listen to her podcast, which I highly recommend, called Unlocking Us. She actually started the podcast during the pandemic. There was maybe 1 or 2 interviews that she did before the shelter in place started. But for the most part, it has been very, very helpful. So I highly recommend that to people. And so she's just very lately, she did a whole program just on how shaming people isn't a way to get social justice change. And there's lots of research about that. So one of the things, though, that she talks about and that I do with myself and talk to clients about too is, what is our self-talk? And are we saying things about who we are, or are we saying things about our behavior? And there's a huge distinction, because our society tends to, what's the word? We combine those two concepts of guilt and shame. Conflate is the word. And so just paying attention to our self-talk, we can say things like, we're not doing something fast enough, good enough, hard enough, whatever, fill in the blank enough. And when we notice, I think it's important to just notice that we are talking to ourselves in that way. And then we can, once we notice something, you can't change something until you're aware of it. So once we notice that that's how we're talking to ourselves, then we can change it. And that's the whole, when you know better, you can do better, is, okay, I'm noticing this self-talk. And the thing about shame, though, is that it's not always that clean. Like, oh, I noticed that I'm judging myself now. Shame can tend to just take us down into a really dark rabbit hole, into this, people experience it in different ways. I know Brene Brown talks about her experience as this warm wash over her. I can kind of relate to that. I get this sensation in my chest. I think my whole face probably goes red, and I do lose kind of some of my hearing, like going like sort of like a tunnel vision, but auditory tunnel vision. And it can just shame can just take you to this place of, oh my God, somebody just saw that, or oh my God, I just revealed this part of me. And Brene talks about this fear of disconnection is what shame is. And that, I didn't relate to that right away when I heard that description, because shame to me was, what's wrong with me? What the heck is wrong with me? And so I understand the fear of disconnection piece as being the next thing that I think, like, oh, if people see that or know that about me, then they're not gonna like me, or then they're not gonna accept me, or then they're gonna judge me as harshly as I'm judging myself. That's kind of all unconscious. So I think it's really good just to be aware, if we can be aware of that we're going into a shame spiral. And I'm a huge resource person, so I'm going to give you another resource. Maybe this has been mentioned before, but Kristen Neff on selfcompassion.org has been a huge help for clients, for myself. And she and Brene have done a lot of collaborative work together, and they have found that you cannot simultaneously feel shame and be self-compassionate in the same moment. It is neurologically impossible. So I have found, and clients have found, that using her, Kristen Neff's, it's very short, a self-compassion break, is super helpful when we're in any kind of a place during this pandemic when we're thinking we're not doing enough, or we're having a shame attack. It doesn't even have to be during the pandemic, actually it can be during anything that you're going through, that you can use this. And she just briefly, she talks about the 3 components of self-compassion that I'll just like briefly go through is mindfulness, and that's being aware of what you're feeling without judging yourself for feeling it. So being aware of the shame, being aware of sadness or the feeling abandoned or whatever it is that you're feeling. And then the common humanity is the second component. And she says, Kristen Neff says when she does these classes that that's the biggest takeaway, that people say that, oh, it's just such a relief to know being human means that we suffer. And we just suffer. Everybody suffers, and people suffer in all different kinds of ways. And but it's a human experience that we all suffer. So we're not alone in that. And that not alone piece is just huge, because that helps us reconnect with our human tribe. And then the third piece is self-kindness. So talking to ourselves just like we would talk to our best friend who's maybe feeling the exact same thing. And I know when I say that to clients, they're like, oh, you know, I'm so hard on myself. I would never say to a friend what I say to myself. Oh my gosh. And so I think it's just super important that we recognize that kind of talk that we do to ourselves, and then to say something kind to ourselves. Like whatever we would say to a friend, we say to ourselves, which is really kind of a weird practice when you first start. But it gets easier. And what happens is, and I've been in a shame spiral. I remember one time driving in my car, I don't know, I just had a conversation with somebody and I'm like replaying every minute of it in my head. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I said that. And then I go into this shame spiral and like, no, I'm not going to do that. Kristen, what did she say? So I like went through this whole compassion break while I'm driving, right? So I'm trying to pay attention to the road and trying to pay attention to my inner things going on. And within seconds, after I had done okay, this is what I'm feeling. This is a human experience. What do I say that's kind to myself? It's okay. They probably didn't even notice that I said that. I'm the one who's noticing that I said it. They know me. They know my heart. I don't need to beat myself up. And whoop, I was right out of that shame spiral. I will never forget that because it was so powerful while I'm driving. So it's a huge, huge tool. She has it on as a meditation that you can download it's in an MP3 format. So if you need it, it's her voice, and you can have it on your phone or on your computer. Another thing I wanted to talk about is just some strategies around the whole recovering perfectionist kind of a thing. And that is, a friend of mine had an incredible phrase that literally has helped me so much in my own life. And that is, the phrase is called call it good. So we're writing an email and we want to have the perfect, thing that we're saying, and we spend hours and hours on this email and going back and editing, and just call it good, just be done. Or let's say you're gardening or you're decorating or you're whatever it is that you're doing that you get perfectionistic about, is at some point you can say, okay, I'm calling it good. I'm just calling it good. And I don't know why we have this thing that we have to be perfect. Like, whoever said we have to be perfect, and what does perfect look like, right? So that bar is always changing. So there is no such thing as perfect. Let's see. The other thing to be thinking about when we're back to the shame versus guilt thing and our self-talk and self-judging is to, and Renee said this so much better in her podcast than what I'm going to say, but talking about what are the messages that we catch ourselves saying. Are we saying things like, that was the stupidest thing, I can't believe you did it, what is wrong with you? Or are we saying things like, I said that in a way that maybe wasn't very empathetic, and I think next time I'm going to say that in a more compassionate way or in a more open way. That second part is talking about it is noticing your behavior versus who you are. So I think that's just super important. All right, I want to move to I just want to move to the social justice piece really quick. I noticed for myself, especially after George Floyd's death, and I lived really close to where he died, that I was just inundating myself with information. Like, I need to learn more. I need to unlearn. I need to do new learning about racism, about white privilege, about what's my contribution to this, how have I been complicit, and all that stuff. And our therapy group gets together with a consult group every other week, and one of the therapists said, yeah, so what I'm trying to do is just do one thing a day that is social justice oriented. And I was like, you're only doing one thing a day? Oh, that just sounds like a big relief. I was listening to podcasts, I'm trying to read books, and on Instagram and articles and all this stuff. And so I think it is important to pace ourselves. This is a journey, not a destination. And that's kind of what we're on in this shelter in place and this pandemic as well. Also, it's pick your lane. We can't all be the ones that are doing the legislative stuff. We can't all be the ones that are doing all of it. Like, there's so many lanes to be in, and so just pick one, and it's okay. It's enough. It's good enough. Call that one good. So whatever your propensity is in the world, and how you show up in the world, and how you give to the world, that can be that can inform you on where you want to show up in this in the social justice piece of it as well. So I just wanted to mention some podcasts that have been helpful personally for me. The Unlocking Us from Brene Brown, On Being with Krista Tippett. There's one, Kathy, that you were interviewed on, Her Story Speaks. So if you're interested in women in ministry who are social justice minded, that is a good podcast. And another one is The Sacred Collective. I haven't heard a bunch of those podcasts, but I know that I've listened to some of them. So those are just some of the pieces that I wanted to offer today. So thank you for having me. It's been an honor to be here with you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. That was good. What you were sharing at the end there about picking your lane reminds me of, there's a poem or a prayer that's attributed to Oscar Romero, and part of it says, we cannot do everything, but there's a freedom in knowing that. It frees us to, I'm paraphrasing, it frees us to do something and to do it very well. And that kind of struck me as a takeaway as well. Like, picking our lane isn't giving up in some way. It's just freeing us to do something very well, and with that self-compassion that you were sharing about.
Yeah, thank you for that reminder. And, as you were sharing, I'm like, that's so good. That's so good. That's what we need to hear. I feel that every time. And one part is just this reminder of this shared humanity and owning our humanness. Yeah. We're just human. And so that's what you just shared, Joe, too. It's like, we're just human. And so owning that, embracing that, and being gentle, but doing what we can. So thank you for taking time with us. We're grateful. Thank you for the resources. Thank you for the reminder. And if you're listening, what we just really hope is you can just take one thing that you need this week. And that might shift the next week, but just one thing that you can ponder, use, notice, integrate, whatever that looks like. And let's just keep doing everything that we can to last through these really uncharted territory at times that we really don't know how it's going to end, but we do know that we need this kind of stuff to help us make it through.
All right. Thanks, friends.